All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly. Larry Krueger with you on this Friday as we talk a little bit about the matchup coming up Sunday. Niners and Cardinals from the desert. Niners and Cardinals already went once earlier this year, and this one is the rematch, and the Cardinals will be starting Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, and joining us to help us preview the game is Donnie Druin, who covers the Arizona Cardinals and the Phoenix Suns as well for Sports Illustrated. And he's with us on the UMA guest line to give us all the intel on the Cards. Donnie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm staying dry and staying warm. It feels like everybody else across the country is kind of bundling up. It's a crisp 80 degrees in the desert, and I'm afraid I might have to put a jacket on if it falls below 70.
Where are you originally from? Are you an Arizona guy, or are you enjoying the weather there from, you'd moved there from somewhere else?
Yeah, I moved there. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, then moved across the country a little bit, lived in Columbus for a minute, lived in Louisville, Kentucky for 7 years, moved out here in 2012. And I got to say, I love it out here. Not shoveling snow has been one of the greatest pleasures of my life, and I will never take that for granted.
I love Arizona in March. I love it in April. May through October, not as much. But, man, if you can get there in the off season or if you can get there in spring training, to me, the month of March in Arizona is just glorious, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, you're hitting the sweet spot, right? Because we don't really have winter. It's like fall, and then it just transitions into spring. So if you can hit that sweet spot of like late February and then pretty much the entire month of March and maybe a couple of days in April, that's the exact time period you want to be here. But that's you and everybody else, all of the snowbirds that we call them, coming in from out of town, trying to escape the awful weather they have to deal with back in their hometown.
Exactly. I've got a family member who lived in Peoria, Illinois, and now lives in Peoria, Arizona. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, a lot of Cubs fans and Sox fans are down here. I'm like, yeah. It's the entire Midwest is like, let's get to Arizona. Let's talk a little bit about the Cardinals in this one. Are the Cardinals a better offense with Jacoby Brissett than they were with Kyler Murray?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want that to be an indictment on Kyler Murray as a talent or a player, but I just think the most notable thing whenever it comes to Drew Petzing's scheme in Arizona as an offensive coordinator is I think one of his downfalls is he doesn't tailor his system to the players that he has on the team. It's kind of the other way around. He makes guys adapt to his system. And thanks to his previous experience with Jacoby Brissett under center, thanks to their time in Cleveland, Brissett's kind of more of that like typical big-bodied quarterback who can step up in the pocket, deliver throws. He's not the crazy athlete that Kyler Murray is, doesn't have the upside that Kyler is, but the offense is running on schedule. And, play action has worked a little bit for them. The Cardinals haven't been able to run the ball like they were previously in 2024. But Brissett, he's scanning the field. He's getting the ball to guys not named Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. He's spreading the wealth. And I think as a result, it looks like not a well-oiled machine, but it does look a lot better with Brissett under center.
What is Murray's future in the desert? Do you think he's there long-term or, how's that going to work out?
Yeah, it's murky at best right now. And to be honest, I think even without the mid-foot sprain that's landed him on injured reserve, I do think Jacoby Brissett would still be the starter at Arizona, just because the stark contrast in production between the two quarterbacks with the Cardinals offense is so notable that you could not start Jacoby Brissett. Murray, he's due a lot of money over the next few years, but after 7 years, it feels like the Cardinals know what Kyler Murray is. And while that is a talented guy who can hit his ceiling on a weekly basis, it's got to be best for both parties to move on. And whether that's via trade, whether that's going to be him released before his, I think, $17 million guaranteed for 2027 hits on the 5th league day of the year in 2026. All of that's going to sort itself out. But I have a very hard time believing that Kyler Murray is going to be on his roster next year.
Now, in this game, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s got the appendicitis. He's out. Zay Jones blew out the Achilles. He's out. How are the Cardinals looking at wide receiver? And do you think this is going to be, a run-heavy game plan from them because they are down some receivers?
Yeah, so Zay Jones landed on injured reserve. Semi Fehoko, another guy who might have had an impact in this game with all the injuries, also landed on injured reserve alongside with them. So as of now, the Cardinals' top three receivers entering this matchup is going to be Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, and Xavier Weaver. Wilson, in my opinion, is a very good wide receiver too. We haven't really seen him in that number one starring role, so I'm very curious to see how that lands and points out. Greg Dortch was the team's starting slot receiver before Zay Jones took over in 2025. We've seen a little bits of spurts in production out of him, but nothing crazy, nothing to make 49ers fans worry. And to be honest, I don't even think it's going to be a run heavy offensive attack from Arizona because they haven't been able to do that this year. Trey Benson is still on injured reserve. It doesn't look like he's going to be coming back this week. The offensive line has taken a steep step back from their 2024 form. They've been able or not able to do anything close to what they've been able to do in 2024 in terms of establishing the run, getting the play action working from there. And to be honest, this is going to be a Trey McBride game. Trey McBride might set an NFL record for targets, catches, receptions, yards, whatever it might be for a tight end, just because that is the only viable weapon the Cardinals have moving into Sunday.
McBride's been a really, really good player for them. Second round pick in 2022. He's a key guy for sure. How about the backfield? I mean, we saw, I actually lost my survivor pool on that Titans loss on the Dermercado ridiculous, downed it at the 1. And then, of course, Gannon kind of whatever slapped him or yelled at him and slapped him. And then the PA got involved. And ridiculously, the Cardinals fined Gannon $1 million or something. I mean, it was just a ridiculous thing. And now it seems like Dermercado, I thought maybe Dermercado would be cut. Instead, he's like kind of has a bigger role than he even had then. I mean, how is that whole thing, shaken out? And what's the impact on Gannon? Did he lose face at all in the room because of that situation?
I'm sure maybe temporarily he did, because as an NFL player, you never want to see one of your guys get physically touched like that, regardless of their circumstance or what might have happened. I do think some guys in the locker room thought Gannon crossed the line. I don't think Gannon's lost the locker room at all. The vibe is still pretty high, and there's a lot of things that can be said about Jonathan Gannon and his staff in Arizona. But one thing I am not subscribing to is that he's lost a locker room. Those guys very much they're still fighting, they're still battling. And while that's great for the moral scoreboard, that doesn't exactly translate to wins and losses in the NFL. But that aspect aside, I think Amari DiMercato wasn't cut just out of pure necessity. I mean, James Conner's done for the year. Trey Benson was on injured reserve whenever that happened. And then your other running backs in the room are Michael Carter and Bam Knight. And that doesn't exactly instill a lot of confidence in the team or the fan base moving forward to finish 2025. And to be fair, DiMercado, he's shown to have some, explosive to his run. It's not like he's a terrible running back. It was just kind of a boneheaded mistake that he hasn't repeated since. But all of that being said, the Cardinals running back room has been banged up all year. The offensive line has kind of undergone some cosmetic changes as well, and it's just been a recipe that hasn't worked when it comes to running the football.
It seems like the Rams went with three tight ends last week, and the Cardinals do their own 13 personnel, but they do it differently. They do it with Kelvin Beachum. They add an extra offensive lineman, and they, to help them run the ball. Do you expect to see kind of the multi-tight end set with Beachum in there as a additional blocker?
Yeah, I do think so. And I do want to point out that, like, in the classic Drew Petzing scheme, tight ends are used, and multiple tight ends are used heavily, almost more than any other team in the NFL. But I think lately, since Kyler Murray has gone out, and I do think this is also a byproduct of your two best your two best run blocking tight ends being out, and Travis Vokolek and Tip Ryman. I do think the Cardinals have shifted more towards like an 11 personnel approach, to where they're just airing it out 35, 40 times a game with Jacoby Brissett under center, which was not the case with Kyler Murray whenever he was healthy. That sixth offensive lineman thing seems to be a trend going around the league, and I think Cardinals have adopted it as well. They're going to continue to do that. And for what it's worth, like, Beachum, I think, should be starting at right tackle over Jonah Williams. And that's something to watch this week, too, because Jonah Williams did pop up on the injury report. So we might see that as well. They're running out of bodies. The Cardinals are running out of bodies. But I don't want to speak too much, because if there's any team in the National Football League that knows about injuries, it's this fan base listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah, no question. The 49ers are really banged up. But for the first time in a long time, The Cardinals have more guys in the injury report this week than the Niners. How about Bam Knight? What's his situation? He had a couple nice weeks. I mean, there's Dermercado. They have Michael Carter. I've always loved Carter. He's a little undersized, but now they also have Bam Knight. But now Bam Knight's banged up. Who do you expect to run the rock in this game?
This might be a Michael Carter game. The Cardinals, since Benson has been out, have really adopted a like hot hand approach. And the good news about that is that nobody's been hot. So they've kind of just like rotated through the backfield. As seen, they say all three guys, whenever it comes to Demercado, Knight, and Carter, are capable of playing on all three downs. They tend to favor Bam Knight on early downs, and then Demercado's kind of that pass pro guy, and then Michael Carter is more of the pass catching role. But all three kind of seem capable. If Bam Knight does play, I would expect him to lead the Cardinals running back room in touches, and then have Demercado and Carter kind of sprinkled throughout there, and whoever gets quote unquote hot, they'll kind of roll from there.
You know, the defensive coordinator is really young. We're talking about like 32 years of age. Nick Rallis is a really young guy. He came with Gannon from Philadelphia. He's 32 years old. I mean, it's amazing. There's Calais Campbell's like almost a decade older than this guy. It's unbelievable. And Calais is the player, and this guy's the coach. What do you think of this defense? I mean, let's talk a little bit about the Cardinals defense. They're not going to have Mac Wilson. He was a major player, I thought, in that first 49ers Cardinals game. They're also dinged up with a lot of their good young players: Max Melton, Will Johnson, Walter Nolan, Darius Robinson, Dadrian Taylor Demerson. I like all those guys. I think they're all good young players, and yet they're all kind of on the injured list this week. So how banged up is this Cardinal defense coming into this one?
Banged up for sure. And I think the evaluation of the Cardinals defense is it has potential to be very, very good whenever they're fully healthy, but that hasn't been the case all season. Through all three levels of the defense too. I mean, we saw Walter Nolan have a phenomenal NFL debut in Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys. He was kind of neutralized in the Seattle Seahawks game. Darius Robinson has kind of been a little bit of a disappointment here in Arizona. First round pick in 2024. Only played in 6 games last year due to injuries, and then he just hasn't really found his footing, at least in a box score in 2025. Max Melton, Will Johnson, both missed last week. They're both popping on the injury report this week, so who knows with that. And then Dadrian Taylor Demerson, he's technically the third string safety in Arizona behind Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, but they use dime packages a lot, and he plays a lot of football in that Cardinals defense. So even though he's considered a backup technically, that would be a big loss for this Cardinals defense. And I just think overall, like Nick Rallis has done a phenomenal job with the pieces that he's had, but unfortunately, it hasn't been good enough. For whether you want to blame player execution or just overall coaching. I mean, quarters 1 through 3 for the Cardinals defense, they're what I think like top 5 in like EPA, and then the fourth quarter they're bottom of the league. It's like what happens whenever the fourth quarter starts, I have no clue. But it's just something that's happened week after week after week, and I think that started in the 49ers game earlier this year.
What do you think of the job Monty Ossenfort's done, and what do the fans think of him? What do the Bidwells think of him? I mean, because I kind of like what they're doing personnel wise, but they do have a bunch of injuries. They haven't been a very good team as far as the record. Gannon and Ossenfort, I think, is a really good regime if they would just stick with it. But you never know. The Cardinals and a lot of teams, they if things don't pop right away, all of a sudden there's heads roll and there's new faces. Who's got, I guess, more staying power between the head coach and the GM?
I would say the GM, and I would agree with you. I think Monty Ossenfort has done a really strong job, and people forget that he inherited a very bad football team, decided to do the right thing, and completely kind of stripped the roster to its bare bone, hit the reset button in a massive way, and like has really built this thing through the ground up through the NFL draft. And that's not the sexy approach. It's not going to turn them into a competitor right away. But I do think whenever to try to build something foundational to last for the future, not only just a 1 or 2 year stint, I do think that is the right approach. And I mean, he's been very active in trades throughout the NFL draft. I thought he had a very good offseason this past year, getting Josh Sweat, who's been phenomenal, bringing Calais Campbell back. And, even dating back to 2024, you talked about it, Mack Wilson. He was an underrated signing for the Cardinals entering the 2024 offseason. Before he got hurt, he led the team in tackles and was tied for passes defense. I mean, the guy was simply all over the field. I do think injuries have hindered the Cardinals' ability to evaluate what exactly has worked and what hasn't. And granted, like some of the guys they've taken shots on did have injury histories entering Arizona, so maybe it shouldn't be too surprising. But it is notable that Cardinals owner Michael Bidwell is still paying Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, the prior regime they fired. Is he going to want to add to that total? I'm not completely sure. But like financials aside, I think both Monty Austinfort and Jonathan Gannon do get another year. I think they deserve another year. And it looks like they're probably going to have another quarterback to have their own choosing from with that.
Okay. 3, 2, and 1. All right, a little break from the content to tell you about our friends over at Sleeper. This 49er football season is presented on the Krug Show by Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform in the world. It's a one-stop shop. You get blazing fast news, real-time stats, group chat, season-long leagues, and of course, Sleeper picks for daily fantasy. Use promo code Larry, Larry, and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Links in the description. Terms and conditions do apply. Yeah, I think they deserve another year as well. I will say this, though. The revenue that exists in the NFL gives owners a real opportunity to get rid of anybody they want to get rid of, because they can eat, if they want to eat multiple regimes of head coaches and GMs and have those guys all still on the books. I mean, there's enough revenue to support any decision that an owner wants to make. And I think that's why when we get to what they call Black Monday, that Monday after the NFL regular season ends, it seems like every year there's like 10 or 12 guys who get dumped, and it's because of that, because there's so much revenue in the sport that you don't have to have patience. You can, if you don't like it, you can just pull the plug and you can make your problems go away. You can pay them to go away. And it's different in the NFL. There's the offset language. You don't have these, college football $50 million buyouts and these absurd things like that in the NFL. The offset language means that if they dump Monty Austinfort and he goes to Carolina, whatever he gets paid in Carolina, that's, every dollar. He doesn't have to, Bidwells don't have to pay him. So it's a different deal in the NFL. I do think, though, this is a good regime. I think Gannon's a good coach, and I think Austinfort's a really good personnel guy. Let's talk about his first-round pick. He took Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. He also played at A&M, 5-star high school recruit, was always thought to be, one of the premier defensive linemen in his draft class all the way through, going back to his high school class. He was always a highly regarded guy. And then he was hurt a lot early. And then we saw him a couple weeks ago, and he just looked outstanding in that Dallas game. He's batting passes down. He's sacking the quarterback. He's showing internal rushing ability. And then he didn't do as much last week against Seattle. And now he's hurt. Now he's got an injury. What's Walter Nolan's injury? What's his status for this game? And what do you think of him so far?
Yeah, just touching on what I think of him so far. He's been exactly what this Cardinals defensive line has been missing. There really has been a playmaker outside of Calais Campbell, who plays defensive end, to really generate pressure on the interior in both the run and the pass facet. And Nolan, in the debut we saw on Monday night, showed everything that the Cardinals saw whenever they made him a first-round pick. I remember, Jonathan Gannon's opening press conference after the first night of the draft. And he walked in and said, I told myself if we got Walter Nolan in the Cardinals uniform, I would be driving home happy, saying this was a good day. And then he gets hurt the day before training camp. He injured his calf working out at the team facility, missed all of the time up until that Monday night game. And then just looks like that. And then Seattle kind of came back down to earth a little bit, right? And like that Seahawks offensive line, 49ers fans know all too well. It is pretty damn good. The Seahawks are rolling right now on both sides of the football. He did still manage to get in the backfield, just wasn't able to finish a lot of plays. But Nolan, I think, still has a very, very high chance to rebound, or whatever you want to call it, and kind of put himself back against the 49ers offensive line, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is Trent Williams and 4 other guys.
Yes, it's the Hall of Famer Trent Williams, the future Hall of Famer Trent Williams, and
Mhm.
four other guys that are somewhat nondescript.
Okay, there we go. So those guys right there, and that's no offense to them. So Walter Nolan has a knee injury. He suffered it the last 2 minutes of the game in Seattle. His status is still kind of unclear moving into it. There were reports that came out and said it wasn't too serious and he could be able to play against San Francisco, but I wouldn't be surprised if that takes him all the way down to a game time decision, especially knowing the Cardinals and how they like to keep their cards close to their chest, no pun intended. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But Nolan has been every bit of the hype that we've seen from him in the small window and sample size that we've seen. But as you know, how many times do we see a guy come in, dominate for the first couple games, teams get film on them, and then all of a sudden they're kind of neutralized a little bit?
Pass rush is going to be a major thing in this game for both sides. Can the Niners put some rush on Brissett? They couldn't put any rush on Stafford last week. And then can the Cardinals rush the Niner quarterback, most likely Brock Purdy, coming off of a turf toe? What's the status of Baron Browning? I saw that Browning was in the concussion protocol, but is he out now? Do you anticipate Browning going at left outside linebacker in this one?
Yeah, we'll see. That's going to be another thing, and those are tricky because it all depends on the player's ability to progress through the protocol, right? It all depends on them. He was not spotted with like a what do you call it? The yellow non-contact jersey, at least like earlier in the week, which is kind of like the main, hey, like this guy's progressing, he might be ready to go. I didn't see that from him. Whether what the rest of the week looks like, obviously, is kind of like TBD. It would not shock me if he doesn't go, because the Cardinals, especially with head injuries, are very cautious in their approach with getting guys back. And also, they're 3-6. And like, granted, this is very much a must-win game for any sliver of playoff hope for the Cardinals to kind of turn things around. But I think the writing's on the wall that this isn't going to be their year. And like, they're definitely not going to take any chances with the guy, especially with a head injury. Jonathan Gannon, to his credit, has always been like a player first approach, whatever it comes to the guys that are kind of tracking or trending towards maybe playing or not playing. They're always going to aid on the player side of things instead of trying to kind of just force the team's best interest on them. Again, I hate to take the easy way out, but like, it really depends on Browning progressing through the week.
Donnie Druin with us on the Yuma guest line as we look ahead to the Niners and the Cardinals on the Sports Leader. Mentioned Josh Sweat coming over from Philly, and Sweat is really a nice player. I mean, he can dial up heat off the edge. And when Browning, who was an inside linebacker once upon a time at Ohio State and with Denver, now he's an outside linebacker, pass rusher. But they also have a couple other really interesting young guys that they've drafted. They took Jordan Burch in the third round out of Oregon this year. He's 280 pounds. And they drafted Darius Robinson in the first round out of Missouri last year. Is Robinson going to be healthy for this game? And what do you think of those two guys? I mean, those are two big, versatile rushers that could be inside, outside. That you can do a lot with Jordan Burch and Darius Robinson. What do you think of them so far?
Yeah, Robinson is kind of more your more versatile hand in the ground defensive end and Gannon's 3-4 system. Whereas Jordan Burch is more of that like standard outside linebacker kind of guy. Burch popped in preseason. Like, Jordan Burch looked like he was potentially going to make a push for a starting spot in preseason. He played that well. He kind of came back down to earth whenever Baron Browning actually got some run, because the Cardinals didn't play their starters a whole lot. And then you have Zaven Collins too, who's not a premier pass rusher, but he grades very, very well in run defense, and he's a very strong first and second down guy, at least that outside linebacker for the Cardinals. Burch just hasn't played a whole lot, and I think that's just because Josh Sweat's not coming out of the game on one side of the football. And then when you're in obvious passing downs, like, you are going to have Baron Browning on the field whenever he's healthy. So a mix of that has kind of prevented Burch from really kind of taking that next step as a third round pick. But the Cardinals love him. The Cardinals love him, and like, absolutely deserved, because what we saw in preseason, if he can kind of just continue building on that, he might be a starter as soon as next year in Arizona, depending on how things shake out for the Cardinals. But going from him to Darius Robinson, I touched on him a little bit earlier. Disappointing. And I don't say that in a slanderous way, but when you're a first round pick, you are expected to make an impact, not only immediately, but kind of long term as well. We're coming up on the end of year 2 for Darius Robinson. He played only 6 games last year, suffered a calf injury. A lot of people around here think it was an Achilles, but that's not officially reported. only played 6 games. Unfortunately, also had to deal with his mother passing away as well. So that was very not great timing for him right as he was trying to return from the injury. A lot of people thought this was going to be the year, the sophomore surge for Darius Robinson in 2025. And he's just had very minimal impact. Coaches and players will defend him. And, he's a great kid. There's a lot to like about him, but he's strong, he's quick, he's powerful, but there's really no pass rush arsenal to him. He doesn't have a lot in his bag to get past an offensive tackle to get to the quarterback. There's something that's lacking. I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is, but Darius Robinson has not lived up to the hype so far. And granted, you're not going to give up on somebody even after 2 years of poor play. But to this point, I think he's got to be one of the more underperforming pick of the Monty Ossenfort era.
It's interesting. I mean, Zaven Collins is not quite a fit at outside linebacker. Robinson is what position is he? These are all very talented guys, but it's hard to get the production out of them. We mentioned before that Mack Wilson has already been called out of this game with the rib injury, I believe. So Cody Simon, the Buckeyes, the 4th round pick out of Ohio State, steps in most likely at weak side backer. How much of Simon being in there was their issue last week against Seattle? Seattle ran the ball almost 50 times for almost 200 yards. How much of that was Cody Simon responsible for? What do you think of Simon? Because I really liked him at Ohio State, but man, you look at last week's rushing attack against Arizona, and it's Arizona they ran the ball incredibly effectively.
Yeah, Cody Simon looked like a day 3 pick starting on an NFL field, and that's exactly what he was last week. And I really liked him coming out of Ohio State too. He was the defensive MVP of the national championship game. He called the defense for the Buckeyes last year. But despite being a 4th round pick, he had a very impressive resume coming into the NFL. And I think that the hope was behind Mack Wilson, you wouldn't have to kind of throw him into the fire right away. Well, Wilson goes out, and Simon, we talked to him entering last week, and he was like, I had experience with calling the green dot at Ohio State anyways. It's not really a big deal. I've been in Arizona system with the headset since OTAs. It's not going to be a big deal. I don't think necessarily the communication aspect of relaying the calls was the problem for Simon to the rest of the defense in Seattle. I think it might have been that last 15 seconds when the radio communication goes off and he's not quite seeing the same things a veteran like Mack Wilson was. And obviously, he's not the athlete or the talent that Mack Wilson is. Wilson, to his credit, has really taken a step forward as an inside linebacker in Arizona whenever he was an outside guy in New England just a couple years ago. Simon is a very green guy. He's still very raw. He hasn't seen a whole lot like Wilson has. I don't think Simon played bad by any stretch of the imagination, but there was a clear difference with Mack Wilson missing compared to Simon being on the field, for sure.
George Kittle always cherishes his battles with Budda Baker. How's Budda played this year?
Ooh. People in Arizona don't want to hear this. He's had a down year.
Has he?
Budda Baker has not played up to the standard that Budda Baker has set for himself. He hasn't, and again, he has not played bad. He has not played awful, but Budda Baker, at least around here, is known as one of the best Cardinals. He's a fan favorite for a reason. He's well respected around the National Football League too. His numbers aren't bad, but Budda Baker just has not been able to do Budda Baker things in 2025. And I think there's a couple different reasons for that. Obviously, the extra safety with Taylor Demerson on the field, him and Jalen Thompson, there's ample room for other guys to make plays. I think an improved front 7 this year for the Cardinals has kind of taken more pressure off of him. And to be honest, offenses don't really target Budda Baker in the passing game anyways. It's not like he has ample opportunity to generate turnovers and go get these interceptions. Teams actively avoid Budda Baker, and for good reason. But I just think overall, this Cardinals defense was supposed to take that next step in 2025. And while Baker hasn't been a hindrance, he hasn't dragged them down. He also hasn't quite helped elevate them either.
Couple last thoughts before we say goodbye, and we appreciate your time. Donnie Druin with us on the UMA guest line as we look ahead. Niners and Cardinals go in Week 11. It should be a good one. Niners trying to bounce back and get another win in the division. Special teams. This is a pretty good special teams unit, isn't it? I mean, it seems like that this Cardinal team. Ryland is a decent kicker. Special teams wise, how would you describe them?
Yeah, I would say they're one of the better units in the league. It hasn't really seemed that like the case so far this year. There's been multiple mishaps on special teams this year. There's been a couple dropped kickoffs. We saw the blocked punt in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, which is kind of rare for a Jeff Rodgers coached unit. I mean, Rodgers is viewed as one of the better special teams coaches throughout the league, and like his ability to get the maximum amount of guys on that side of the ball has been second to none for a very long time. I would say good, but not great this year. Chad Ryland has been a phenomenal kicker taking over since Matt Prater got hurt. Forced Prater out of the job, basically, because he kicked so well for them. He's made big-time kick after kick. One of them was against the Niners last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. On a game-winning drive. Yep. So he's done that a few times. He's proven to be reliable. The punter, Blake Gillikin, is actually on injured reserve this year, and he's kind of one of the better punters around the league. Pat O'Donnell, the replacement, has been okay. It's kind of hard to deep dive into punters at this point in the season, but it's been no stretch bad by any means. It has potential to be good, but they're kind of holding themselves back.
If I say positive story for the Cardinals this year, what's the biggest positive story? I mean, I'll say this for me. I love the fact that they found Denzel Burke late on day 2. I think Denzel Burke was a really good player at Ohio State. And to me, I was shocked that he fell to the 5th round. I love that pick from Monty Ossenfort. But outside of Burke, what would you say is the positive?
Will Johnson looks like the top 10 guy everybody thought he was before all of his knee injury concern came through. And granted, he's popped on the injury report. He's missed a couple weeks this year. But when Will Johnson has been healthy and on the field, like he looks every bit of that top cornerback prospect that people thought. If we're going to go, positive, gotta go Trey McBride. Trey McBride is just dominated week after week after week. And it seems like defenses know what's coming with him and they still aren't able to stop it. And like, granted, that Cardinals offense has been very dysfunctional this year. They haven't been able to really do anything quite successfully as they would have liked. But the one consistent week after week has been Trey McBride, and he's well on his way to another Pro Bowl this year.
Oh, he's awesome. He's an amazing player. He was great in college, and he's been even better in the pros. Last one. Are you surprised that Monty Ossenfort did not trade Calais Campbell? There had to be 4 or 5 teams that, with all the premium that's put on defensive line play in this league, there had to be calls at the trade deadline for the Cardinals to move Calais Campbell, and they didn't do it. Are you surprised by that?
I'm sure there were. I'm not surprised because I talked to Calais Campbell about it personally, and he said he didn't want to go anywhere. He said he wanted to see things out through the end of this year with the Cardinals. And quite honestly, like Campbell is one of the few guys in the locker room to where he's earned that respect to kind of dictate where he wanted to go and in his future. And I feel like if Campbell did want to leave Arizona, the Cardinals would have done right by him and would have traded him to a contender to try to get that coveted Super Bowl ring. But Calais Campbell's the man of that building. For people who don't know, like Calais Campbell practically walks on water. So if Calais wants to stay, Calais is going to stay.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love when teams show some loyalty to some of the players. Donnie's a great follow on X, everybody. At Donnie Druin on X. He covers the Cardinals and the Phoenix Suns for you Warrior fans who want to find out more about the Suns for SI. Donnie, thanks for jumping on KNBR and giving us a preview. Give me on the way out the door, give me your prediction on this one. What's the final score going to be Sunday?
Ooh, I got the Niners coming out on top. I don't know if that's too surprising. Give me San Francisco. I'll go 28-13. 28-13 right. Niners.
Sounds good. We'll take it. Donnie, thanks again.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Donnie
Druin from SI stopping by. We got more straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly on a Friday on the Sports Leader.